On this week's episode of the Corpus Animus podcast, us four are going to talk about our recent trip to Wodapalooza. We got a bunch of questions from the audience, which we'll read. But before we get into that, we just put 3 camps at Training Think Tank HQ up on our website, and Adam is going to tell us about them.
Yep. So we got 3 camps. Each one's going to have its own basically unique theme. So the first one's March 22nd and 23rd. This is like, we're calling it a camp, but this is really going to be more of like a age group competition simulation. So this is meant for age groupers, either teen athletes or masters athletes who need to prep for online qualifiers. This is something that we learned last year with Kyle in terms of the number of times that they had to do stuff online inside of their own gym. There's lots of unique things that go into that preparation process that we want to have people prepared for before they get to either an affiliate semifinal for the CrossFit Games season or a different competition entirely. So that one is March 22nd and 23rd. The second one is going to be our season prep camp. This is basically like our bread and butter camp. This is something that we've done in the past where more workouts, more skill breakouts. There's going to be a couple of talks. There's going to be individual coach feedback after each one of the workouts and making sure that people take away as much as possible. So people that have been to camps before, this is the one that you're probably most familiar
annual
with.
Camp.
Yeah, this is the big one. And then later in the summer, I think that we are going to shoot for June 20th to 22nd. I wanted to have a community camp. And the community camp is one where we're going to peel back some of the intensity of the season prep camp, make it a little bit more about a celebration of fitness, a celebration of the TTT culture and family and everything else. We'll still work out. I'd like to be able to get out to go to the park, be able to go rafting or something else, get out of the gym for a little bit, maybe have a pickleball tournament that Perrin and I tried to put some logistics into.
I like the sound of that.
Still be plenty of workouts and everything else, but I think that one's going to be more about just like us as a family getting together and trying to enjoy each other.
Cool. Chris, you put the link in the bio or whatever, not the bio. You put the link somewhere near the video that they can look at and click on. It's on the website too, so head out and check that info out.
All right. Our first question from Nicole McGinney. What was the atmosphere like, and how does it compare to the previous years, especially with that different venue we had?
Who's starting?
Well, it can't be me. I asked the question.
Yeah, Perrin, you're the only one who hasn't spoken yet.
This is actually something I thought about going into the comp because I was like, it's a new location. It's still Miami, but unless you were at the Tier Cup, which I wasn't sure if they were going to model the same thing, I didn't really know what to expect. So I feel like overall, except the weather could have been a little nicer on those first few days. That kind of
Thursday and Friday was just bone-chilling pain in Miami.
Yeah, that was rough.
I had to buy a coat.
Visually, like walking up to the venue off of that main road, I think it's Ocean Drive. Yeah, like kind of seeing the stands pop out and seeing the signage and stuff. I thought it was really cool. I mean, you could hear the announcers, like everything they were saying. I think I had dinner at the end of Friday night, and I could actually hear the last event and what was going on. But
Alexis won. It's great.
Yeah. But I thought overall, the atmosphere was good. I think it was positive. People were definitely a bit happier when the weather got a little bit nicer. I mean, we can talk about the logistics of the setup, but huge improvements with the amount of seating. There were still some stuff with like VIP areas for preference and all of that. But generally speaking, I think one of the biggest gripes I've had in the past is just not having anywhere to see the events. Yeah. And that didn't seem to be as much of an issue this year. Now, I didn't watch all divisions, so that probably wasn't the case for everything, but generally, like I feel like January is just such a nice time to like get into usually warmer weather in Miami, and the culture of Miami Beach was definitely different from Bayfront. I would say in a positive way, but it was different. It was a lot more hotels with restaurants outside and more people outside, and less like giant apartment buildings and office buildings. So it's just a different feel, more. I don't know, like more homey, I guess, in a way.
The thing I noticed the most about the venue difference-wise was it was like, it felt at least, I don't know about the actual floor plan, but it felt like they spread it out. Like Bayfront Park was very condensed. And that condensing brought all of the fans really close to the venue. And because they were small seating areas, it like packed people out and back and up. And the energy, I feel like in Bayfront was more like directly in your face, where the platforms were spread out way more. There was more seating at most of them other than the lifting platform. So I thought that it was a little bit less intensely chaotic and intimate, which I don't know, like as a fan and spectator, I love that because I hate crowds. I hate not waiting in line to be able to just see people work out. Then if you get up to be able to watch people work out and you need to get back to the warm-up area and you're trapped by people, it kind of sucks. So I liked it, but I was thinking as an athlete, this might be kind of weird. Like, you know, it used to be like, oh man, there's like hundreds of people that cross the finish line that are right in my face screaming with all the lighting. And that just felt a little bit different to me. Not good or bad, but just very different from what I thought of as Wodapalooza.
I think part of that is because there was so much more seating. At least that's how it seemed than at Bayfront. Like I was thinking about the Bayfront venue, you know, the one that used to be on the water, and they had such limited seating for that. Every time you competed there, it felt like there were so many people in the stands. But I actually think that for some of these events, there may have been more spectators, but they just were so spread out that when you're, you know, even when you're in the stands, you look around, you're like, well, that whole VIP section's empty and the stands are thin up towards the top. So it felt like it was less attended than previous years. But I think for the athletes, especially like you talked about the lifting stage, how there wasn't a lot of seating there. I think as an athlete competing on that lifting stage with that many people standing around it would be so cool. I was very envious of them getting to lift in that environment.
Yeah, it was interesting. I feel like the energy and the number of people was probably the same as what I remember. I haven't been to Miami in a couple of years, but it was much more directed at Bayfront. Like it was much more intense. The lifting stage probably replicated that by accident by not having bleachers. But yeah, I felt like the energy on that one was really, really high and was kind of fun to see what you could see. Every now and then you see a barbell or a hand.
That was I was trying to contemplate how much like negative constructive criticism, but I did not like that. Like I went to a lifting event and I was like 10 people back and couldn't see anything. And I was like looking through the crack between people standing there trying to catch a corner of a barbell lifting up. And I was like, damn, why couldn't this been on like the main stage or something like that?
I had to watch it on the live stream for reasons we'll probably talk about. And from the live streams, of like with the camera being on there, where they would just, it would look like a sea of people because from their perspective, looking out, you know, there's like layers and layers and layers of people going back. So I think from the athlete perspective, it probably looked like you were truly surrounded by people. But when you're standing back there, you know, and you're like, oh, I think they got that lift. He locked it out, I think.
Yeah, the big compromise in the vibes was that Kyle wasn't around for the first 2 days.
The only other point I have is that I preferred that venue just better. I'm not a huge fan of sand, and I thought the sand played potentially a safety risk type thing on certain events. Like the box step ups started to get real sketchy for people. They were blowing it off. The lanes started getting wavy. Oh, sorry. Anyways, I liked it better because it just was like walking across the street to my hotel, and then you're like walking through Muscle Beach and all these people training and exercising, and Tier definitely stepped up their game in terms of like activations and marketing. And
they really did.
I would say my preference, even though I felt a little bit of a loss of nostalgia from the years of Bayfront, I was like, okay, I would prefer this.
Can get excited about this.
Yeah, I would like to come back here again because I could see things, and like you can kind of exit the stage kind of easily, and you're not standing like this packed and trying to like get to a venue and not be able to see anything.
The thought that I had was, Wodapalooza has always been known for having the swim event, right? Because it's in the bay there. So I don't know how they do that here though. I don't know how they do it in the ocean. Like that's the one thing where it was like at this venue, like it kind of handcuffs you in a way with some of the things that you can do. I'm glad they got out in the sand. I'm glad they had that little like sandbox platform where they could do those kinds of things and make it like put their own like, you know, brand on it, put their own flavor on it. I thought that was cool. Yeah. But the loss of a swim event at Wodapalooza was like, that's kind of a bummer.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, venue aside, I think there were other reasons why that probably happened, but I don't think that, I mean, I would find it very unrealistic for a competition like that to have the resources to host an open water, like in the ocean, because ocean open water, I think, is way different of a beast than intercoastal. I mean, they're both risky, but the ocean, like rip currents and public people on the beaches and getting boats out there with the chop and current. Like
and everyone's biggest fear, sharks.
Yeah. But sharks do get in the intercoastal.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, they do.
Yes, they do.
Less maybe though.
They did do a off-site event last year, a run eco bike in like some trails.
Oh yeah.
And so I would be curious if they wanted to integrate swimming back in, if they'd actually have an off-site event at Bayfront.
Yeah.
It's not that far. It would just be more logistics, probably more expense. But I thought just culturally Miami Beach was more fun. Like it just seemed like a nicer place to be.
There were a lot more people asking questions. So like as you're walking in, people would just be like, what's going on over there? And you explain, and then you have to try and explain CrossFit. And you're like, actually, I have to go coach.
Yeah, it's just fitness. Yeah.
It's just fitness.
Yeah.
It's racing fitness.
I'm getting signals that we might want to go to question number 2. Is that accurate, Chris?
All right. Okay. So our second question is from Rob. Give me the number again, Chris.
915.
915.
Our second question is from Rob 915.
Not 914.
To be confused with 914. How long is the actual like ramp up and lead up into Wodapalooza once someone qualifies for the event? How long do you prep someone?
Well, the only person I had that qualified through the event was Caden. Everybody else that I coached, I think, got invited. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know, actually. Did Annika do the qualifier?
Oh, yeah,
she
did
might
the
have.
qualifier,
Yeah, she did the qualifier. But generally speaking, if they qualified for the event, from the qualification all the way through the event is just a training block. So it's almost the training for it starts immediately after qualification, which I think was end of October was that event. So it was basically November, December. It was kind of like a 10-week training cycle, I think I wrote up. But once somebody qualifies, I basically go into their training sheet, map off all the remaining weeks, and then that is my training cycle leading into the competition, which might have been different like for people doing other competitions leading into it. But for somebody that had nothing, it's basically just, okay, now we're prepping for this event.
Those girls did Dubai also, right?
Yeah,
In the middle of all of that.
But Caden didn't do anything, and Travis was just training for team. So the training cycle is kind of dependent upon what they were doing. Annika and Linda did a competition, deloaded, kind of got prepped pretty quick. Caden did like one long training cycle from the time he qualified all the way into the event.
Was there specific things for the girls that were different from Dubai prep than Wodapalooza prep?
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like we're guessing a lot of times, but we have enough data to look at Dubai, the types of events, the event structures, the venues that they normally use. So we use that to kind of say like, okay, we're going to do a lot of odd object work. We're going to do a lot of long endurance work. We're going to do a lot of stuff that could train for like a Burj Khalifa climb, like things that are off the wall. Like they did the ski ramp run where ran like down the ski slope and back up. So like we were prepping for that type of stuff in Dubai. When Wodapalooza came, the theme is usually, and I think Guido kind of set this from when he started Wodapalooza and it never really left, is just like, it's pretty classic CrossFit. I didn't anticipate the sleds in the sand, but pretty much everything else is just kind of like a CrossFit workout. Like the workout with the bike, run, step up is kind of like a hero type workout. Everything else was pretty much like couplets, triplets, and classic movements. So it kind of shifted into that type of training and preparation for them.
So Lydia and Tanner did the qualifier, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
What was
right
it like
off
for
of
them?
Crash. They were kind of in a similar boat where that qualifier started the week Crash Crucible ended. So Lydia was so sore, and she got sick. So she did the qualifier sore and sick.
So did Tanner.
Yeah.
Which is not surprising.
Yeah. So it was almost like we had to carry the training coming off that comp into the qualifier and then try to deload.
Yeah.
And then you really only had like a few months plus all the holidays to get into it. But I actually tried to look at the tier cup because I knew it would be a similar setup. So I would say the only thing I changed outside of expecting kind of that classic CrossFit stuff was once we knew there was no swimming, we just cut that out. And then I just had her do a lot of sled stuff, sandbag carry, like thinking that they would have those like lanes in the sand. And then she did get out to like an indoor volleyball court once to try to drag a sled in the sand and found out that sand on a heavy sled is an issue. But yeah, I mean, for her, strength is obviously always the largest priority. So we got right into a strength cycle and really only probably did maybe 4 running sessions before the event. And, still she did really well on the run and had a lot of wins on the strength stuff. But like she failed her last rep on the hang clean coming out of the front squat on the lift, so that was a bit of a bummer. But Crash Crucible was actually a really good prep for this because there was a lot of similar movements. Like the 70-pound dumbbell snatches set her up really well for that event because it was like 48 reps.
There was a lot of them.
Yeah. So a lot of improvement was made even just from October to January, which I think we were really happy about.
Nice.
This was Lexus's first competition in a while.
Since Tier Cup.
Oh yeah, when was Tier Cup?
September?
End of September?
End of September, I think.
Yeah. Was it a prep for this the whole time? Or did you train her for a while and then you picked a starting point of okay, now it's a...
Well, at that point, we still didn't know what was going to happen with Rogue. And so we had to basically make that decision at the last minute when things weren't trending the way that we wanted them to. But yeah, the Tier Cup stuff, the stuff that Perrin took away was a lot of the same things. It's listen, this is what they like to do. This is what they want the event to kind of look like from a spectacle standpoint. So you try and prepare them for that as much as possible. But once we knew that Rogue was off the calendar, then it was basically build running volume as much as you can, build gymnastics volume as much as you can, and then pick the strength lifts that are probably most likely based off of the qualifier and also what they've tested in the past. So I think we prepped pretty well for it, given that. It would have been a lot harder, and I know that it was harder for girls who did Rogue, did Dubai, and then came and did this. So she was probably set up a little bit more for success in terms of the amount of time she had ahead.
Yeah, I think a normal training cycle into a competition for as a general question is probably anywhere from 4 to 12 weeks is usually how long my comp prep cycles are. 4 for people that are competing really frequently. And I think that's going to be more common at the elite level now with World Fitness Project, plus a season, plus Rogue, plus Wodapalooza, plus Tier Cup. I think people are going to have to get used to not having these really long, prolonged cycles to get ready for just one thing, which that used to be what everybody did because it was just the CrossFit season and maybe one off-season comp. But now I think the market shifted where you got to just be ready to get competition ready quicker, which means your general base level of training all year is more of a priority.
It also means less, periods of time where you can take off, right? So everybody still needs a period of time after a major competition like Wodapalooza off afterward. You have to have some time to deload and let the body rest and recover. But that window has now gotten a lot shorter because the frequency of competition is a lot higher. So I think that's another thing to consider. The training cycle, the shorter you can keep that training cycle, the better, because then you can get into the next one sooner and maintain some base. And for athletes, like a Lydia or like a Tanner who do still need to close gaps and build fitness, they have to have periods of time where they're not just training for a competition, but actually just training to get better.
Progressions for things.
Yeah.
Annika with running, for example.
Yeah, that's a good one.
All right, next question, sir, from the peanut gallery.
From Coach, our third question from Coach Brad Marshall is, how do us as coaches like to interact with our athletes on game day, in the warm-up area and stuff like that? I'll let you guys take over.
You can start. You didn't answer the last
one. You didn't interact.
Yeah. I just died. No, I
Alex
actually
is stay in his hotel room and vomit.
Yeah. That is the last thing that I want to do. I love coaching in person. I love being at events and actually being able to help athletes go out there and be their best and get the best out of themselves. I feel like, sitting behind the computer and writing the training programs and stuff, it's cool. It's kind of fun. It's a good creative exercise, but coaching is about being out there and helping people learn lessons, make decisions. That's what I think I don't want to speak for everyone in the room, but it's what all of us enjoy about this process is the actual act of helping people compete better.
Yeah. I remember when you got back from Dubai, it's been a long time since I've seen you that happy, and you're usually pretty happy, but the experience that you had there of being able to be there and coach in person was just, you can tell how fulfilling it is.
Yeah. It was the thing I liked about Dubai, and Wodapalooza is always different. There's always so many people there. It's very different. But the thing I liked about being at Dubai was that I had this team of athletes. It was, Toby, Annika, and Linda, and we were just this little unit, out there operating. With Wodapalooza, it's a lot different because there's so many people, and like each of us was there and had our athletes and stuff like that. But the other thing I like, which isn't answering this question, but I also just like interacting.
We're not going to answer your question, actually.
I like interacting with all of the TTT coaches there, right? Just like getting a chance, because we are all on computers so much and like working so much when we're here. Then you get there and it's like, I got to chat with Max for hours on Thursday, not Friday.
Yeah. Yeah. My interaction, I think, as a coach my goal is to make people as independent as possible so that I don't need to be there. And I think I cultivated that partially for my own self-protection, because I'm more introverted and I don't really like crowds. But also in the early days of CrossFit, you were almost ostracized from your athletes. Coaches weren't allowed places. They would bring them at the games into underground places and not let you talk to them. So I thought, okay, well, if I'm teaching them to rely on me for strategy and all of this stuff, I'm actually setting them up for failure. The sport's evolved from that, but I think that like legacy learning I try to put into people. So I just let people dictate what they need from me. Like some athletes are more high maintenance, where they want me to be in the warm-up area and give them a structured warm-up. Some people are like, I'm good. Like if I see you, great. If I don't see you, I got all my strategies and I'm good to go. And I just let people tell me what they want from me. And if I could get my best case scenario, it would be ahead of the workouts. We know strategy, game plan, execution, warm-up. They go and do their workout. We debrief after the workout, try to process whatever that emotion is. If it's like a real high because things went well, cool, get them back to more level and get them ready for the next workout. If it went bad, try to forget the experience and move on to the next workout and just kind of go one workout at a time. And I don't really have like a planned structure. It just kind of evolves with the person. Like Annika's much more independent just naturally. So she'll have somebody back there with her and she'll ask me if she needs something. So she like came over and was like, hey, I need you to look at something. And I'd go over, and Linda likes more like, hey, give me a warm up, give me structure. And I would like spend more time just chilling with her in the warm up area. So I don't really have like a set system.
I think it also depends how many athletes you're coaching in that particular competition. Like I've had comps where I'm running around like crazy, and it just makes it really, the prep becomes way more important so that people know what they're doing. And then that teaching that independence also becomes more important, so that if there's a change on the fly they need to react to that wasn't in your plans, they understand what's going on. But I was fortunate to only be coaching Lydia at this competition, and it was nice to just be able to focus on her, and we also stayed together. But kind of same thing as you, like you almost have to react. You have to decide how you're going to react after each event. You just take it one at a time, because you don't know where they're going to be, their headspace, if it's a high, if it's a low, and then what they need to prepare for. Like some of the events, the first day, there was like an hour between the first two events. So really fast turnaround. So how are you going to handle even just nutrition, whether or not you go back to the place you're staying or not? All those things actually I think become important. But yeah, I think coaching in person at these events to me is like the best part of the job, hands down. So I was just fortunate to be there and have an athlete who was competing, and obviously chill with all you guys, though we were all pretty busy. So
Seriously,
I think I saw you twice.
Yeah. We were trying to figure out the 27-minute corrals.
Perrin gave me the best. So she was coming off the floor with Lydia the very first day. Like the men went, the women went, and then the women did event 2, and then the men went. And they were coming off the floor, and it was like the big unknown event. It was a sled drag through the sand. And we just happened to catch them. I don't know if you were like debriefing Lydia or what, but I was like, Perrin, like any pro tips, like we'll take anything you got from watching that event. And she gave Tanner like the best piece of advice on that sled drag workout, which was basically like, hey, you can't win this from the front half. If you go too hard on the first interval, you're going to blow up. I just watched everybody blow up. So like whatever you were thinking on the first one, if you were thinking like, I'm going to go a 10 out of 10, back it down to an 8 out of 10, which really for Tanner meant that we had to back it down to like a 7 out of 10. He did it. And I was watching the event with Travis, and Travis is like, what is he doing? He's going so slow. And I was like, well, he has a plan. And sure enough, by the last round, Tanner ended up taking second in the heat, even though he was dead last off the rower. But that was thanks to Perrin and Lydia with their very nice touch right there.
Very nice.
Adam, do you want to add any interaction stuff?
Yeah, I think that my approach to interactions on game day is to take as much off of their plate as I can. And that's not to say that like I don't want the athletes to be autonomous. It's that I don't want them dealing with stuff that they don't have to deal with. And so
like
if
food,
there's
water,
if there's things that I can do that it's going to make them be able to stay a little bit more present, stay a little bit more focused, not have to worry about details like when am I getting corralled, what are the details of this one, where do I have to go, when do I have to come back, like parents said, like timelines change all the time. So I think that what I try and do is I try and do what you said in terms of what can I do to help out as much as possible. So for that weekend with Alexis, it's being in charge of the timelines, knowing where she has to be, when she has to be there, what she has to do inside of the warm-up so that she doesn't have to worry about any of that stuff. With Pip and her team, it was basically like just be there, be a person that they could bounce their strategy off of, not necessarily hold their hands through the warm-up or anything else because they're pretty good about that, and the warm-up area was chaos.
that was another environment thing.
But I think my main goal is just to make sure that they know that they're not alone, that they're supported, that I have their back, and that I'll do whatever it takes to set them up for success.
Question 4 from spreadsheet_training. What makes a good coach?
If you guys figured out, let me know.
Yeah.
We define this in the courses? Like we spent a lot of time about we defined what good coaching is, but not a good
and the
coach.
Coaching process.
Yeah.
I feel like we kind of answered it in the last one. I mean, we kind of talked about what our roles as coaches were for our athletes.
Yeah.
And every athlete also is going to be different and want different things.
Well, I think that actually is the key to it. Is coaching is a service business, and you're a servant of your athletes. Like it's not as glamorous. You're kind of like a shepherd carry or a donkey carry this stuff, but because of that, your determining variable of success is how they perceive you doing a good job. And some people, that means they want hand-holding and they want strategy, and some people they want just a good program, and some people want a personal relationship. So I think there's characteristics of like knowing your craft of programming, knowing the humans that you're working with, but I don't really think it's an easy thing to measure. I don't think it's a measurable characteristic.
Well, like you said, I feel like the athlete's the one that measures it, and the yardstick that they use is going to change from athlete to athlete.
And through their career, because I think there's things I did with people at early parts of their career that they were like, oh, this is really helpful for getting the best out of me. And then like they evolve a little bit and they're like, hey, you talking to me like this is now not helping me succeed. So even your own process has to evolve with them based on them deciding whether or not they want that from you.
Yeah, so if we work under the assumption that the athlete is the one setting the metric, then a good coach becomes a person who's very aware of what that metric is and how it's being measured. Like you're going to have to change the service on any given day for any given athlete, but you need to know and be very aware of what that athlete wants and expects out of you, and that's a good coach.
So was a good coach adaptable, collaborative? Like those are all things that I think would describe what a good coach is, but that doesn't define a good coach.
I mean, it's just a hard thing to define. I think I focus on program design and getting people better, communication, motivation, presence, and being accountable if somebody needs something from me. But I don't know if I look at those things and do them, and then all of a sudden I'm like, well, I did a good job this weekend. Like it's kind of up to them.
And what yardstick do you use to measure success too? I think that's another thing that has to be defined by, like you were saying, by the athlete. Like the athlete determines what success is. They should be determining what success is before they go into a competition, right? So like they should have some expectation, and a good coach is someone who just facilitates them to achieve that. Doesn't mean that you like can have a hand or like are the deciding factor in their ability to achieve their outcome, but at least your job in some sense is to facilitate that.
Yeah. And they might not achieve it and blame you for not achieving it and think you're a bad coach, even though you did everything in your power to try to set them up for success. So you could be like, well, I did everything to be a good coach, but this person thinks I'm a bad coach. Doesn't mean you're a bad coach, but maybe just like in that relationship, you're a bad coach to them, but your other athletes think you're okay. So,
well, you might have been a bad coach in that case, because what you didn't do is teach them that they need to have some personal responsibility, that like in the end that the buck stops with them.
Yeah.
You can lead the horse to water, but you can't make him drink that whole thing.
Yeah.
You can lead the athlete to water, but you can't.
Yeah. That was a philosophical breakdown of what a good coach is, I guess, that we didn't answer.
All right. Question 5, I think, from Brandon McBay. What did you see in your athletes at Wodapalooza that excites you about the 2025 season? Perrin.
I've always really liked Wodapalooza because I feel like it kicks off a new year, right? But the work to get to the performances start months ahead of time. So depending on what the athlete's done in the off season, it's usually like the first time they can showcase how they've improved in that off season period of time. So for Lydia specifically, like I mentioned before, strength is always a priority. And while the lifting event didn't really showcase that, every single other event I think absolutely did. And not only how she's improved physically, but her execution, her aggressiveness, her ability to recover between events. So one of the big things at Crash in October was when she tested some of the workouts, the intensity was lower than how she executed in the competition. So there was a workout called Dumb Standard, which was heavy dumbbell snatches and clean and jerks and ring muscle ups, and she PR'd that by like minutes on a short workout. And so her body was like wrecked after the first event of a 3-day competition. And so that's an issue, right? When you are performing way above your ability to test it, because you can't simulate how you're going to react in consecutive events. So that was actually probably the biggest win. I mean, after the second day, which it was pretty dense, it was 6 events in 2 days, she was like, I'm ready to go for 2 more days, you know, and semifinals and Crash, she was both really sore and beat up from that. So I mean, I think that was a huge win, and those things can't really always be measured, and people can't see those things. So while, you know, there were some disappointments and also some really great moments, I think that kind of showed me the trajectory for 2025 is going to be a lot more positive. And also, I think the disappointments of benchmarks that you're trying to reach for and haven't quite hit is like the best fuel for motivation into the season. And to have that happen at the beginning of the year, I actually think is a really good thing.
Yeah, because you got a lot of opportunity to come back
so
from it.
much opportunity, yeah.
All right, I had 4 athletes compete. I'll do each one quick. Annika, I feel like the biggest positive thing is that she won the lifting event in spite of not really doing any lifting and only training endurance. So I think it's a good indicator that we can maintain home run power on a lot of workouts while still working on the things that she needs to get better at, which there are things that she needs to get better at, but I say that was kind of a major win, and her headspace has evolved and been much more mature as she's getting more experience in the sport. So I'd say that's kind of her win. Linda's win, she didn't really have a great weekend mentally, emotionally, performance-wise. I think that was not her best performance, and she probably would say that. I know she would say it to me, but I think that is kind of the win, because sometimes those disappointment and bad experiences help set the tone for like, okay, we need to re-goal set, redefine what success is, figure out what went wrong in this competition. So I think sometimes the setbacks can be clarity, and I think we got that, which at the beginning of the season could be really good. Travis performed really well and had fire and motivation, which he's going to need going into a pretty dense season, being part of World Fitness Project and doing the season. Like, there's a lot that he's going to put on his 34-year-old body with 12 years of experience in the sport. So being motivated by a win and excitement, I think, was a good positive to like spark the season out. And I'd say the same thing for Caden. So Caden won. He kind of won in dominant fashion in the teen division. I wanted him to go RX because I thought that he could compete at that level. But he came off of a back injury and he hit a huge clean hang clean. He performed pretty well on every workout. I think there were a couple blunders, but I think it was just an overall big confidence boost for him to like kind of get on the scene and realize like, okay, I don't need to be competing against teens anymore. I need to like step up to this next level, and I know that I'm good enough now to start doing it.
Is that the end of teen for him? Does he turn?
Yeah, he turned 19 January like 18th or something, and the deadline was like January 1st. So he's technically was like 19 by the time he competed, and this was his last opportunity, and that was the argument for him doing it. I was like, hey, you qualified RX, and like I think it's probably where your level is now, but he was like, well, this is the last time I'm teen. And I was like, all right, well, this will probably be the last chance you can go out and dominate like this for a while. So if you want to do it, go flex. And it was good. It was fun. It was it was reinvigorating to be doing it with somebody where there's a love of the game. Like, he's not paid yet. He's got no bills with kids. He's not a professional athlete. He doesn't know all of the inner workings of the sport on the back end. So he's literally just there for ego and winning and not like brought some dominance, shit talking. So it like tapped into the youth side of my spirit, which I liked.
That's cool.
So those were my 4 athletes.
Nice.
I had 2. I had Tanner Balaz and Tyler Tusinian. So I'll start with Tyler. Tyler was on a team they actually won the SoCal Wodapalooza, the RX, and then so they got an automatic invite out here and took the automatic invite. Whether or not they should have been in RX or competing in elite is very debatable. They took runner-up out here as a team, and as a team, they've got great chemistry. They train together, multiple times per week. They're so good on the worm and the stuff where a lot of the RX teams just they don't have access to those things, and so as a team they were fantastic, and it just reinforced the same thing that we saw when we were out at the West Coast semifinal with Tyler's team. Tyler is an incredible leader for their team and just carries that through the whole weekend. The one thing I'm disappointed is I barely got to see them in person because I was dying on Friday.
Kyle got food poisoning. We didn't mention that. I just kept saying he was puking in his room.
Yeah, it was terrible. But yeah. Tanner had he finished 24th, but he had the best in-person major competition he's ever had in his entire life. And so I went back and before we did this podcast, I wanted to put into context what that means for him. And so I went back and looked at all his old semifinals, his Wodapalooza last year. He's never finished outside of the bottom 20th percentile at a major in-person event. And here he was 50th percentile. He finished 24th, and there were 14 multi-time games athletes in front of him and 2 behind him. So his performance was actually really good relative to where he's been ever before. Now, there's still a lot of things that Tanner still has to clean up, but some of those are, I think, biases that I've identified in my own programming. All of my really high-level athletes tend to not do very well on odd object stuff and the heavy dumbbell and things like that because I don't think I program it as frequently as I need to. So I'm excited because I've identified this common hole that a lot of my athletes have. And now if I identify a problem, I'm definitely going to address it. So someone like Tanner is going to be able to take some of this stuff and really build on it. And, I sent him all that information that, hey, this is where you finished in the past. This is where you finished now. He really only needed 3 places and he was well into the top 20, 3 places average per event. And I showed him how much each of those
couple seconds here, couple pounds here.
4 seconds here, 5 pounds on the lift and all this stuff. And you're 15th place.
Yeah.
And 15th place in that field is pretty impressive. So I'm excited and I think very similar to Perrin because I saw improvement on a lot of the stuff he needed to improve on. And now he's knocking on the door for being a really good competitor and finally is starting to have the experience that he needs to actually go out there and play the game the way that he can train, which is what I think is most exciting for me.
Yeah, because he trains really, really well.
He does.
Yeah.
And online qualifiers, generally speaking, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I read your post.
Yeah. I'll start with Pip. I think that it was very, very fun to watch Pip in that environment. The experience that she had as team before with Mike and Brandy, it's very easy to just sort of put yourself in this role as doing what you're told and filling this certain purpose. But with those girls out there, Pip was like Tyler, she was the leader, she was the team mom. She was organizing everything. She was making the strategies. And on top of that, out on the floor, she took the bulk of the grunt work. Any time that there was any doubt about somebody being able to do something, Pip was the one to step up to it. And so it's exciting to see her come into that role. It's exciting to see her sort of reinvigorate her love for the sport again because of, everybody, all of us have kind of gone through that in the last couple of months. But it's going to be pretty cool to see going forward how she decides to go forward with the team sort of format. I think it's perfect for her and perfect for her personality. And then Lex, I think that, it was wild to see her eating during a competition. The simplest thing, we woke up on Thursday morning and I walked down to her room to get ready to go to the venue and she's eating eggs. And I was like, what is even happening right now? And then eating in between events and eating huge dinners at night. And it's man, this is just night and day what it used to look like before. We were walking on eggshells, didn't want to put smells around her. It was just crazy. But now just knowing that, like, I hope that we've turned that corner. I hope that these treatments that she's getting are going to help us put that behind us, because that is, I mean, I'd have a hard time saying I'm more excited about anything else, because there's so much more potential still to come there.
Yeah, it's very hard to be a high performer while your body is not feeling good, especially a big part of your body. Like food and fuel in a multi-event, multi-sport athlete.
I mean, I say that she was healthy, but she also had some sort of sinus infection that she was carrying around with it. But the fact that she still got third, like, it's a testament to the fact of, like, this girl's used to working out sick. Like, like, she's just used to this.
It's her
like,
baseline.
The fact that it's not her gut and her nose, like, it made it a little bit maybe more manageable. But, like, yeah, like, even that, like, the first event and maybe the toes to bar event, like, probably could have gone a little bit better if she trusted her breathing a little bit more. But even then, it's just more reason to get excited. You know, the things that she's good at in the sport, the CrossFit things, like, even knowing that there's couplets and triplets out there, the CrossFit stuff is where her bread and butter is. So it's going to be a fun season.
Yeah.
And her lift was awesome.
Yeah, her lift was really, really good. But it was one of those things where you go back and you look at the trends and what they've tested before. And, like, in the build-up, I was like, they're going to do something, like, clean. And so she was PR in her thrusters, PR in front squats. Like, we were just ready for it.
What was her PR clean leading into that?
It was 237, I think.
Yeah. It's a huge percentage to hit.
Like 97% for a double.
Yeah. I ran into her a couple times throughout that weekend, and one of them was walking to the porta potties before the lift. And I was like, back there, it was cold. There was no soap. And I was just like lost back there. And I heard someone go, "Max." And I was like, what the hell? And it was her. And I was like, what are you going to hit? She's like, oh, I don't know. Maybe like 230 or something. And I was like, can you hit it? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, you can hit it. And she was like, okay, I can hit it. And then I texted her right after that workout. I was like, I fucking told you could hit it. It was awesome, though.
That was a good
moment.
Alexis impersonation.
Yeah, it probably wasn't, but that's how I interpreted you. Sorry, Alexis.
All right, our sixth, I think, question from Terry Manzelli. What was each of our favorite workouts for the weekend? Adam, you're first.
I mean, I'm going to say the double under handstand walk, handstand push-up one. I think that I learned a lot about that. I think it was a really well-programmed workout, honestly. I think that there's a lot that went into that workout where on paper we didn't really think it was going to play out like it did. I think that there's strict handstand push-uppers in the sport that might be a little bit better than what Alexis is. There's people with a dumbbell that might be a little bit better. There's people with a jump rope or maybe even like speed on their hands. Like I can think of girls who are faster and stronger, but I think that the accumulation and the aggregation of those movements inside of that made it to the point where a specialist was going to have to work really hard and still be really good at the other things. I think that you saw the races play out and the handstand push-ups were probably the biggest separator, but that doesn't mean that the dumbbell wasn't a separator, either the snatches or the lunges. And it doesn't mean that handstand walk capacity and ability to recover and get back on your hands wasn't an issue. And then the double unders at the end were also a very big separator. After all of that stuff, we saw people lose 4 to 6 spots just on that last set of double unders. So on paper, I thought, I was like, all right, handstand push-up workout. Like, we're going to go grab this. Like, we're going to get all the points. But when it played out and like we ran through it and we're like, man, we got to be really, really smart about this because there's so many other variables in here that while they're not quite as important, they're very, very important to decide who's going to win this.
Yeah, it was separation on every spot.
There was
maybe
potential,
more on the handstand.
Potential separation on everything. I wish that they would have done 6 legless for girls. I think that it
would have been even more.
I think that
separation.
one would have mattered a little bit more. I don't think there was a ton of separation on the legless, if I remember well. There were still girls who like they caught up a little bit on that part. But I don't know. I don't like changing the gymnastics numbers for girls. I think that they're capable of it.
Yeah. My favorite, clean, hang, clean. And I think I like lifting. I like lift. And it just happened to be a good workout for all 3 of the individual people that I had. Linda hit a pretty big number that she hadn't hit in training a lot leading in. Annika won the workout. Caden won the workout for teens. So like it was performance-wise, but my favorite workout of the weekend was actually one that I had missed at the venue because it was the final team workout. I was at the airport watching the boys. They were super close point gap. The end of the workout, they're lunging back with Mayhem's team. Mayhem gets a no rep, and they like came through the finish line, won the workout, won overall. They were like running up and down screaming, and inside I was like, like so fired up at the airport. They were probably like, who the hell is this guy? Don't let him on the plane.
In the Delta Lounge, flipping tables.
Yeah. So I got real fired up just sitting in the airport watching that one. But those 2 were my favorite moments. or like favorite workout moments?
I mean, I had the same answer as you for all the same reasons. So I'll pick something else. I actually, the last workout, what ended up being the last workout, Cordadito 2.0, when that was the first workout to get announced, and I was like, this workout's disgusting. And then when I heard it was going to be last, I was like, this is just going to be
and right after the bench press.
After the bench press, I was like, this is going to be a disaster. But the bench press one was actually fun to watch, I will say. But the reason I kind of changed my mind on it was because it being the last event and the finale, you had to be extremely strategic with what you were doing. And yeah, I mean, I think Lydia typically hasn't been great at high rep, high volume barbell cycling, and her muscle ups improved a lot. And I think she just executed very well. But I don't know. I wouldn't say it was the most fun to watch as a spectator, but I think as an athlete, understanding yourself at that point in a competition and what you need to do to get your best result, the cream kind of rose to the top in that situation. And I will also actually say some athletes that were maybe a little bit lower in the leaderboard took some risks on there to try to jump some spots. Some paid off and some didn't. And there were some athletes that shined. I think like Lexi Neely won that. And she was in the second to last heat. Yeah. And just had really good execution. But yeah, that workout, not one I'll ever try.
No, mine was the bench press workout by far. That workout looked like so much fun. As I know there's a lot of people that are like bench press haters that because they're really bad at bench, but as someone who loves bench press and like watching
and burpees and chest bars.
Yeah, like what a great workout structure. And they used the floor so well, having to drag the blocks back. And there was a little bit of like some elements of execution where you had to make sure you got down there and had a way to stack your blocks quickly, carrying them, 2 blocks at a time is way more fit. Like just a cool, and it's one of those ones that if you screw up, if you go too big on the bench press on that first set, you are out. Yep. There is nothing you can do, and you're going to be doing singles and just standing there, sitting there, watching everybody else. Maybe that's why I like it so much, because in bench press, so you get to sit down.
Yeah. I like bench press in Metcons too.
Yeah, that was cool. And I'm so bummed I didn't actually get to see it in person. I had to watch it on the live stream. But it also was Tanner's best event because we like bench.
Nice.
Max likes lift. We like bench.
I like bench.
What do you think about the dumbbell standard of being able to scope?
Oh, dude, weird.
Caden was JM pressing his. Yeah. Is this JM press? This one?
Yeah.
Did he have 50s?
Yes.
Yeah. He did a big set though. I think he did like 25, 10, 5 or something like that.
Compared to the rest of the teen division, Caden is like truly a grown man.
Yeah, but he doesn't look like a grown man. He doesn't look like he should be that
like
strong.
Like this, he looks like a grown man. Not like this.
I played with that the other day. I was dumbbell benching, and I felt like it was way more triceps.
Yeah.
It is. You think you got to try to get your wrist to bend without letting your arm, like your upper arm or lower arm, deviate internally.
When they had, what's it, 80 or 85 at semifinal 2 years ago?
It was 90.
90.
Perrin figured out with his arm length that he could do basically like a variation of that. I think he kept his elbows in more instead of flaring out, but he was able to do way bigger sets by just, letting the head touch. So I think, yes, you should play, like they should get the standard dialed in, but cool event. Yeah. Fun event. Question 7 from Terry Manzelli. How did we advise our athletes to navigate variables like the sand? Max, I think you're up first on this one.
I don't really know if I did anything specifically to navigate. I just think it changed decision-making. Like the sled carrying 2 blocks for the girls didn't really seem like a possibility just based on how heavy they were, arm position, and then the sand being like, I think if that were just a rubber floor, there would have been more girls that took the risk to carry 2. But when you have 2 kind of awkward blocks and then uneven footing, girls were like kind of carrying and falling over, and they're like, hey, the risk of doing that is not worth it. Just run and grab one and run back. So I think it made decisions like that happen, but other than that, there's nothing you really could do to navigate it. It was like, hey, the top of the box is slippery when sand gets on it. It's like, well, be aware of your footing. Like, you're not going to be able to wipe it off if you're doing 150. So I don't know if I did anything strategic.
There was one moment. So when Perrin was coming back from event 2 with Lydia, and we were like, hey, what advice do you have? she did say that if you can get into undisturbed sand. So basically when people would drag the sleds down an event 2, it would pack down the sand in those spots. And eventually by like the 3rd or 4th sled drag, they would get these like almost ramps in the sand. And Perrin was like, oh yeah, find clean sand. Like just slide when you're turning your sled around, slide it over just a little bit and get it into some clean sand and people can pull it way easier. And so that was the only like unique piece of advice that I gave Tanner was, hey, listen to what Perrin just said and find some clean sand. And he did it. And it was legit much easier to drag. And by the end of the event, they had those, the big pallets that they were dragging across, because I think they also realized like they need to smooth out the sand and kind of make it a little bit more of an even, an even surface going across.
Now that you said that, I did have one advice thing with the sled. I said, when you try to get it onto your shoulders and push the straps down, try to lift the front of the sled. And when you spin it around, make sure that there's not a ball of sand right in front of it. Cause I think that happened to people. They would spin the sled around, and as they spun the sled around, it pushed like a big mound of dirt or sand in front of their sled. Then they tried to pull against it. It would get stuck and they would kind of fall and stumble.
Yeah, and then the tip of the sled would be down, and they'd be like, instead of dragging on like the sled surface like this, then they'd be dragging the front kind of V through
and
the
wedging sand
like
up.
An anchor.
Yeah. But I think that's really it. I don't know if I said anything.
I did not
helpful.
like the sled in the sand. I just was like, there's no way it's going to be equal from lane to lane. And just it's physics. Like if you're dragging something heavy repeatedly through deep sand, it's going to push up. But it is what it is. The only other thing that Lydia, she adjusted this on the fly, was running in the sand. If anyone's ever done that for long durations, is pretty tough, not to mention with like a weighted vest. And so my thought for that event, 2K of running, 1K in a vest, if you're kind of bad at running, I think it's going to expose you a little bit more because it's going to be a bit more muscular. So what she did was she actually went off course a little bit, and nobody really stopped her, and ran through an area where she could see that like trucks had been driving on, so it just wasn't as like loose and deep. And she said she felt like that saved her legs, especially for the box jump. So she probably traveled further distance, but actually ended up saving a little bit of energy. But that's just one thing I don't think you can prepare for unless you have access to sand.
Yeah, I prepped them on sand actually, and it didn't work that well, because then afterwards I was like, Caden's back blew up. Annika was like, oh, it was such different sand. It was deeper than what I ran on. And then Linda afterwards, I was like, you should really pick up your foot cadence if you're running on sand. And she like, you should tell me that ahead of time. I was like, well, I did put it in training. We just like never really spoke about it. But that was definitely maybe an error on my part in terms of navigating the sand. Next time I'll be more clear.
I had told like shorter strides than what you're used to. But the other thing that we talked about with the sand running was not to worry too much about what your objective pace is, but to just latch on to somebody that's in front of you. Like you're not going to be at your 4K, 5K pace at all. You're not going to be anywhere close to that. Don't worry about the actual pace that you're at. And the good thing is she was right next to Emily Rolfe. And so get her out, beat off of the bike, and then get out into the sand, and then just latch on and let her do the work. Let her worry about the pacing. All you're thinking about is stride rate, maybe even trying to step where she's stepping, so you're stepping on compacted sand instead of loose sand.
Yeah. Watching her too, I feel like she was just in a spot where she finished, where like the strategy of it kind of like spread out and separated. It was like the group ahead of her was a little bit ahead, and the group behind was like way
I remember
behind.
telling you this the night before, how the finish of that overall thing would have been the same if they stopped it after one round versus 2 rounds.
It was the same?
It was almost, because like when she came in, I think it was Lydia that might have come in after her, but it was maybe like 30 or 40 seconds.
Yeah.
And so there was no reason for her to really try and push to stay ahead of and then Lydia came in and started jumping and bounding right away. I was like, oh, we got to go.
Lydia's the only one who jumps spots in that. Yeah, I agree.
Lydia maybe passed 1 or 2 because her box jumps were real fast at the end.
Yeah. So that was not true on the men's side. So at the top of the field, that was true. So like the first 5. Yep. But in the middle, there was so much movement that happened on the second round.
I think people blew up, though.
That's exactly it.
I think it's like a muscular thing.
Tanner went from
the sand
16 to 24 on the stepovers at
on the
end.
Box, on the second box.
Yeah, he was blown up.
Yeah. I went for a walk on the team day. Instead of going into the warm-up venue, I was like just kind of anxious and wanted some space, and went for a walk on the beach, and I walked all the way on the sand side of the venue, all the way down and all the way back, because I wanted to see the venues from the other side. And just walking on it really blew my calves up. I'm like, man, you can't really get traction. So I was walking, shuffling like a little penguin on the side of the venue, trying to move in the sand. Gave me a little bit of just reality of how hard that would have been to run 1K in a vest and then do another 1K after all the biking and step ups.
It's a good thing they're fit.
Yeah. This is freaking, I knew it.
At CrossFit Goals.
I have to ask this question.
How did you make such a stud?
Our final question from who?
It's from Caden asking it about
It's
himself.
from Caden. Our final question
you
from
surprised?
Caden himself, asking Max, how did Max turn Caden into such a stud?
I didn't. He's just a monster.
He's
a
not.
monster of
That's
a
the
human.
problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he did do a lot of strength work and a lot of low volume work and a lot of endurance work, but I honestly feel like you can't really take credit for that. Like sometimes people have a gift. I think without blowing his ego up too much, I think he's a very talented physical human. He's super dedicated. He works hard. He's also got a big mouth, and as you know from his question, but I think really at this point with a young athlete in development like this, I'm not building a champion or whatever he is or whatever he becomes. I think I'm just helping him navigate and keep it on course, answering seriously to his dumbass question. You suck, Caden. I'm just kidding. I love you.
What do you guys think about Wodapalooza moving to March?
It's going to be so much warmer.
It's going to be hotter.
Definitely gonna be
Yeah.
warmer.
Yeah.
So
Aren't we going to be competing with spring break?
potentially, but that might be what they want.
I think it is what they
More
want.
people walking by to come in.
I think I read an article that they're trying to get out of the stereotype of partying in spring break, and they want more fitness and health. But
That's what Miami Beach wants.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think it's going to be weird.
It's going to be hot.
Okay, did you guys go to the check-in?
No.
Okay.
But Tanner told me about his check-in experience.
Check-in
was
was
it?
wild. It was at
Clevelander,
the
right?
Clevelander Hotel, and they have an outside bar. And so they're running a party with people at the bar. They're drinking, whatever. And we're trying to check in, standing in line. So you have all these CrossFitters, and then you have all these wasted people. Like there was a guy with green hair and a unicorn inflated outfit. Like there was a woman that came up to Tanner, that looked like she was trying to pick him up. Like it was an out of body experience. Yeah.
Nice.
It was crazy. So, I mean, it just has this strange.
March is going to be pretty hot for an outdoor
That's
venue.
what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Lydia was actually kind of happy it was a little bit cooler and overcast because she's from Wisconsin and she came from negative 15-degree weather. If it's sunny, I was thinking if it's sunny and hot, that's going to be a factor.
I mean,
next
you
year.
could have 90-degree weather
Yeah,
in March pretty
100%.
easily
The one
outside
good
with
thing-
high humidity in Miami.
The one good thing is that you'll have the breeze from the ocean. So there will be some sort of breeze going on almost at all times versus if it were at Bayfront in March, it's just going to be the beat down from the sun. So that cold wind that we all were complaining about would potentially be something that would be beneficial, maybe a little bit, but it'll be much hotter and I think probably pretty dry too. So it's gonna be a different thing. But hey, at least we won't be freezing.
Yeah. It'll be right after the Open.
Yeah.
Good.
Cool.
All right, everyone. See ya.
Peace.